What's going on, guys? Matt with MotoWorks here, and in the next couple of videos we're going to be working on a buddy of mine's TRX400EX. This is a 2002 and it's in pretty rough shape. It sat for a while and doesn't start, battery's dead, you know, things like that. It's just been neglected. So the next couple of videos we're just going to be going over the process with which I take to get these things back to running and get this thing back to them as soon as we can. But let's take a look around the four-wheeler now, and we'll go over what I'm going to be doing and you know, the shape it's in now. I don't know if you can see this, but the tires, they're definitely going to need changed. They're cracked. I've got a new set of tires for it. We're going to be flushing the fuel that's in the gas tank. Like I said, this thing's been sitting for a while. He's not exactly sure how long, but it has been sitting for a while. This one's actually not a bad example of this four-wheeler. He did a really good job, for the most part, of taking care of this. Usually these things are pretty ratted out by now. I mean, it is 20 years old now, and it's still in decent shape. Yes, the seat's ripped. We do have a solution for that. But overall, I mean, it's not a bad four-wheeler. Come around here, take the whole seat tail section off here. And oh man, to say this thing's 20 years old, this is, I remember when I used to work for the Honda dealership. It was one of my first jobs right out of high school. And I actually set these up brand new. So if this thing's 20 years old, oh, I don't even want to think about how old I am. But things like the muffler, you know, he was young and modified his exhaust at some point, and he just would like that to be a little bit quieter, a little bit more secure than what it is. And so we have a muffler for it. I also got a new air filter. We're going to rebuild the carburetor. Freshen up the spark plug, change the oil, stuff like that. That's just the minor things that need done service-wise. The only exception being the carburetor cleaning, you know, as far as the extra work that's involved. And since it has been sitting, we are going to flush the fuel out of the tank. At some point in time, it looks like the bolts fell out of his rear brake caliper there. Doesn't seem to have affected his brake rotor, but I do need to get some new bolts and the clips, the retainer clips that keep those in from doing exactly this. Chain and sprocket are going to be replaced. But overall, it's not a bad four-wheeler, like I said before, and the carburetor is probably not too terrible because, I mean, it's a little bit of a delay from when I let off to when it actually, you know, goes back to a rest. So it's probably a good sign that it's not going to be terribly gummed up. So I think just a rebuild kit will do the trick. I don't think we have to do anything as far as replacing the carburetor. But battery's stone dead. I mean, it has been sitting for a long time. But that's the four-wheeler. That's what we're working on here. I do have the battery charging. So once this thing goes green on our charger, we'll be popping that nice new battery in. And in the meantime, while that's charging, I am going to just go ahead, take carburetor off, and we're going to see what that looks like. So to remove the carburetor off of this, the carburetor's right here. I'm going to have to take the gas tank off here, which means I'm going to have to remove the plastics away from the gas tank, these side plastics here, this top piece here. And there's just going to be some clamps that secure the carburetor to the intake tube here. I might have to move the air box out of the way, but we'll see when we get there. But that's what we're going to do, is we're going to just remove the gas tank. To do that, we just have to take off these plastics. Alright, so I ended up taking off the air box and the intake tube, so that gave me the most room to access the carburetor. I also removed this cover here, which goes over top of the cylinder head, because I will be doing a valve inspection. Just because I'm here, I have the tank off, I might as well just check the valves, you know, see where they're at. These are easily adjusted with just a screw type adjuster, so while I'm here, I'm just going to knock that out. I'm also going to be putting a fresh spark plug in, so that's another reason why I took that cover off. It's just a lot easier than trying to come in through the side here to get that new spark plug in and the old spark plug out. So I have access to everything I need now. The carburetor is sitting over here on the bench. So I've got a nice semi-clean towel. This is where I can set all my parts on and keep them nice and organized. But I have the carburetor out. And the carburetor is nasty looking. I mean, this thing has been just caked in mud and kind of neglected. So first thing I'm going to do before I take this apart is I'm going to get a lot of this dirt off of the outside of the carburetor. And I'm just going to take some Purple Power that I have in a spray bottle and some hot water. And I'm just going to dunk this whole thing in hot water. I'm going to take out a toothbrush. I'm going to scrub this down. Now, I'm not worried about getting water in the carburetor because after I clean it all up, we are going to be disassembling it and we're going to be going through it, and I have a rebuild kit here. So that's the part number of the rebuild kit there. This is an all balls carburetor rebuild kit. Comes with all the gaskets, new jets, new needles, everything you need to, you know, replace anything that could be potentially bad in this carburetor. So that's a nice shiny carburetor here, and it's nice and clean. So I would say that this is a clean carburetor, but it is a carburetor that has not yet been cleaned. Now that may sound strange to some people, but I've had customers come to me before and claim that they clean the carburetor and the vehicle still does not run. And it's mainly because they do this. They clean the outside of the carburetor and they say, okay, now that I clean the carburetor, why doesn't it work? Well, it's not the outside that we're worried about, but there is value in cleaning the outside of the carburetor. For me, it's just so that all this filth doesn't get put back into the carburetor when I'm rebuilding it. And you know, the other thing is I can also look at this carburetor now and I can see if there's anything broken, missing, damaged that needs repaired while I'm taking this apart. Couldn't really do that before when the carburetor was all caked in soot. So the carburetor is nice and clean, everything looks good. We're going to actually start to disassemble this carburetor, and before we do that, I already did it, but snap a few photos of what the carburetor looks like together, so that way you don't get confused when you go to put it back together, as far as like, because there's a bunch of different hoses and you want to know how they're routed. You know, this is the time to do that, not afterwards when you're scrambling trying to figure out where everything goes. So nice cleaned off carburetor. So we're going to start taking it apart and we're going to see what it looks like on the inside. If you are doing a carb clean and it does not look like this on your 400EX, then you've got to take it apart a little bit more. So the carburetor itself didn't look terrible. I mean, it's still relatively clean in there. The jets that were in there were a little bit gunked up, but I think honestly with some fresh fuel, this thing might have fired up. So it's not, this actually isn't in terrible shape. We are still going to be doing the rebuild kit because there are some gaskets that I want to replace. Like these seals, over time they just start to fail and they'll start to leak. So nice new O-rings in the kit, and we'll be able to refresh everything in there. But when you take it apart, you kind of want to put stuff in groups of how you took it apart. So for the accelerator pump here, I have the screws that held it down, you know, the spring that was included with it, and just anything that had to do with this part. Now you don't actually have to know what the part is called. Just take your time when you're removing everything and keep everything for that piece in, you know, order and together, so that it helps you remember when you go to put it back together. Again, don't be a stranger to taking pictures. Take lots of pictures if this is the first time you've done something like this, because it's only going to help you during the reassembly process. But this is a part. I'm going to be using this Berryman's Chem Dip, and I'm just going to take the carburetor, the float bowl, the accelerator pump bowl, this is pretty much on the bottom of the float where the main jet picks up a lot of the fuel from. That was pretty crusty, so I'm going to be putting that in there. And then the jets, emulsion tube, all that stuff's going to go in the dip as well. Now this dip takes some time, so I'm going to be doing something else while this stuff is soaking. But yeah, we're just going to take it in there. Alright, so inside the air box there was a little bit of a mouse house. Couple of acorns in there, chewed up, some lint, and very, very dirty air filter. So going to take the air filter off, put a nice fresh air filter on, and make sure I serve the eviction notice. But it's not the worst I've seen. But I'm going to get this new air filter in. After a nice little soaking in the chem dip, everything is looking nice and clean. So, I mean, it wasn't terribly dirty to begin with, like I said before, but everything's nice and clean now. The carburetor's looking good. Which means we can start the process of reassembling everything. So the carburetor is all reassembled. Reassembly went pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Like I said, I took pictures of it when I took it apart, as you should do as well. I made notes as to where things were set. If you guys want an in-depth carburetor disassembly, reassembly, I could certainly do one of those in the future, but this one here is just kind of just went through it, got it done quick, and now it's ready to put back in the four-wheeler. And if we come over here, we'll see the four-wheeler is ready to accept it. So I didn't drain the gas tank yet. I'm just going to hook up my fuel IV for now, just to make sure that it runs and nothing's going on, because I still have to adjust the valves. I am going to throw a fresh spark plug in there. I got the exhaust on, just the muffler here, and I installed a nice brand new battery over here, and I wired up everything correctly on that. Positive cable wasn't hooked up correctly, so I corrected that. And now, like I said, I'm going to install the carburetor back onto the four-wheeler. Right, so the air cleaner's in. Every last trace of mouse has been evicted. And just like with the carburation, you want to make sure that the air box is clean before you go putting it back together. And not so much worried about the outside of the air box, but the inside, yeah, you definitely want to make sure that that's clean. And we will just put the air box lid on, because I believe that we are ready to fire this thing up. So I have my fuel IV hooked up right to the carburetor. I don't see any leaks as of yet. Nothing is leaking. So we're just going to see if this thing fires up. Probably going to need to choke, but let's see what we got. we have success. Awesome. Sounds really good. Idle, gonna have to mess around with that a little bit, but I want to get the valve adjusted before I put everything together. Just wanted to see if it would start, and so far so good. Everything sounds good on it. The engine sounds nice and healthy. There's oil in it. On these engines, they're dry sumps, so you can't really check the oil until you get them running. So that's why I checked the oil while I was running. But there is oil in the machine, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a valve adjustment before I put it back together, and then I'm going to start it up, let it run, get it up to about operating temperature, and then we're going to drop the oil out of it because I want to get that oil circulating through there, get it hot, and then have it drop any contaminants or anything that are in it. Nice hot oil, it suspends it in there and gets it a good drain, but I think that's a good start. No pun intended, but four-wheeler starts, it runs, it sounds healthy, at least at idle, and giving it the little bit of RPM that I did. And you know, I think we're at a good stopping point for this video here. In the next video, we're going to be putting on the chain and sprocket. I'm going to get the hardware to install the rear brake pads at some point. We'll see when that stuff comes in. We're going to be adjusting the valves, and yeah, we're going to probably, as long as everything comes in, probably be test riding this next video. So we'll have a fresh set of tires installed on here, new chain and sprocket, and we might or might not have the brake hardware by then, but that's not going to stop us from riding it. But we have success. The four-wheeler starts, it runs, I'm happy. So we'll see you in the next upload, guys. We'll keep plugging away on this 400, get this project done, and then we'll move on to the next one. Thank you so much for checking out this video, guys. As always, if you like the videos, please be sure to give them a thumbs up. Any comments you'd like to leave below, anything you'd like to see, I didn't go over very well, just leave that in the comments below, and ding that notification bell so you get you're the first to know when a video launches. But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Have a good one.